Hey everyone, going to be looking at a Mass Mutation deck for Keyforge in this video. This is one of the print and play decks that FFG have released. Quite an interesting one, Cyclonium Chamber Agent. It's one of the first times we've really had a chance to get a good look at an actual deck out of Mass Mutation, look at some of the new cards. They revealed a few new cards on stream and then released these so you can print and play. I'll put the link to the FFG website where you can download PDFs of these decks in the description, so hope you enjoy it. So here's the deck we're going to be looking at, Cyclonium Chamber Agent. It's a Dis Logos Shadows deck. So before we get into the cards themselves, I just thought I'd sort of take a step back and look at the deck stats overall. Creatures 17, 15 actions, 3 artifacts, 1 upgrade. And looking at the pips, of course now there's 4 different types of pips in Mass Mutation. So Ember pips, so that includes the ones printed on the card plus bonus Ember pips. There are 10 of those. 1 capture pip, 2 additional draw pips, and 3 damage pips. So not quite sure how this is going to play out in terms of deck analysis moving forward, but I just thought I'd pull those stats out. Now my assumption is that the decks FFG are going to release sort of before the full release of Mass Mutation. They're going to be pretty middle of the road in terms of power level, and certainly looking at the stats, 17 creatures, that's pretty much on a par with all of the different releases to date. So Kota, AOA and Worlds Collide, that's pretty average. Actions maybe slightly higher than most, 15. Artifacts, upgrades, again pretty much bang on the average for most decks out there in play at the moment. So I think what we're probably seeing here is a pretty average power deck. So it's probably giving us a pretty good feel for the sort of range of decks you might see in Mass Mutations. So let's start to look at some of those cards. So first up, Bone Saw. So this is one of the cards which we had seen previously. It's a 5 power creature. If a friendly creature was destroyed this turn, Bone Saw enters play ready. So pretty handy. In this case it's got an extra damage pip from one of the other cards in the deck. Not too much to say about it. I mean, it's a 5 power creature, that's always good. It's going to stay on the board. It's got a helpful ability which you can play around if you can. It may or may not trigger each time, but not too much more to say than that. Next card, in fact next 2 cards, Dark Minion, 1 power creature, it's a mutant. So this is what's providing some of those damage pips, so it's enhanced damage pip, and it's got a destroyed effect, deal 1 damage to each enemy creature. So I think that's pretty handy. It's not going to stay on the board long. It's pretty easy for you to kill if you want, or for your opponent to kill. 1 damage to each enemy creature, that's going to be useful for popping wards, small amounts of damage. Not going to be too handy at removing anything substantial, but it's a nice little feature, and certainly if you've got any cards that benefit from having a number of enemy creatures damaged, then that's going to really help. So another Dark Minion, Gateway to Dis card we've seen before a number of times, personal favourite of mine. So it's an action, destroy each creature. When you play it you gain 3 chains, but one of the best board wipes there is out there. Next up, Implosion. So this is a card we've seen in the reveals before, comes with an Amber pip on board, destroy a friendly creature and an enemy creature. So you've got to sacrifice one of your own, but to me, great card. You're going to get rid of your worst creature, you're going to get rid of their best creature. Really good action to have out there. And another one. And then one of the new cards, Break Key, an action, comes with an Amber pip. If your opponent has more forged keys than you, unforge an opponent's key. If you unforge an opponent's key this way, your opponent gains 6. So I think in combo with a load of other cards in the deck, this is pretty good. It's definitely, for me, better than Keyhammer. I think the fact that they only gain 6 if you unforge their key is good. The fact that it isn't reliant on playing it immediately after your opponent's forged a key like Keyhammer. You can play this any time if they've got more keys than you. So I'm liking that. Pretty good card. Double Doom. So personally I quite like this one. Return an enemy creature to its owner's hand. Your opponent discards a random card from their hand. So returning creatures to hands I actually quite like, particularly against Worlds Collides decks where you've potentially got a lot of amber captured on cards, on Saurians. I think in Mass Mutation we're likely to see Sanctum capturing a lot, so this kind of thing where it's hard to protect, destroy, effects that protect against destroying a card don't help you here. Your opponent then discards a random card from their hand. I really like that. I like hand control. Anything that causes your opponent to discard a card I like, because it really disrupts their play. You can get really lucky with what you force out their hands. Now the first of the sins. So we haven't seen all the sins, but we've seen a few more on stream and in this deck. Desire, 3-power creature. I quite like this one really. I think this is going to be one of the more powerful ones to pick up. Keys cost +4, so that affects both you and your opponent. And then you've got a reap effect. Forge a key at current cost, reduced by 1 for each friendly sin creature. So you're putting up your opponent's key cost, and if you've got a load of sin creatures out and you can reap with this, you're going to bring your key cost down. So if you've got 2, 3 creatures out there, sins out there rather, then that's going to really help you gain an advantage over your opponent. So I like that. One of the more powerful sin effects, I think. Envy, next sin. Elusive, it's 3-power. Reap, if there are 2 or more friendly sin creatures, capture all of your opponent's amber. So again, relies on you having a number of sin creatures out in play. You've got to get this down. It's got to survive a turn, and then you've got to reap with it. But capturing all of your opponent's amber, again, potentially super powerful if you can get this into play and moving. Pride, 4-power sin. Reap, ward each friendly sin creature. Again, what can you say? Not going to say no to that. Ward, very strong reap effect, so takes a turn to come into play. Would have been nice if it was a play effect, but I'm liking that, and I quite like the artwork as well. Wrath, 3-power, 3 armor. It's another sin. Taunt, poison, skirmish. Fight for each friendly sin creature. Enrage an enemy creature. Well, I think the poison, skirmish, and the taunt are good. The fight effect doesn't really do it for me. Enraging creatures can be handy against Lycos, I guess, when there's quite a few kind of reap effects out there, but not the most powerful. But I think in terms of putting something on the board that's going to pretty much kill off anything it fights, then yeah, I like it. Right, moving on from this, let's have a look at the Lycos cards. So again, a few new cards in here. Eclectic Inquiries first up, which is an action. It's got an amber pip. It's picked up one of the bonus damage pips here. Archive the top 2 cards of your deck. So you haven't got much control over what you archive, but always like archiving with Logos, building up for those big turns, so that's a nice card. Effervescent Principle, seen that before. Another good action card. Each player loses half their amber, rounding down the loss, gain 1 chain. That in combination with a few of these other things like that break key could be pretty nasty, where you're putting a lot of amber back in your opponent's pool just in time for you to halve it. Cumex Creature, 1 power. Play, draw a card. Destroyed, archive Cumex. So this is one of the creatures we actually saw in an earlier stream from FFG. Quite like it, nice artwork again. Play, draw a card, brilliant effect. Destroyed, archive Cumex, so you're just going to keep cycling these back and forth. So that's a card I like. There's a couple in this deck. Standardized Testing, back again, a card we've seen before. Play, destroy each creature with the lowest power and each creature with the highest power. So that's a nice bit of board control for Logos. Yeah, used that before in a few decks and enjoyed it. And another. And sorry, I might have just skipped on. No. Cronus. This was one of the cards revealed on stream. Again, quite like the artwork here with the kind of giant robot eye. It's a mutant. It's a 3-power creature. So this one comes with enhance 2 draw effects. So they'll have been added already to other cards. And its main effect: after you resolve a draw bonus icon, you may archive a card. So you need to have this in play. If you've got this down on the deck, when you use a card with a bonus draw icon, you get to additionally archive a card. So that's quite handy. Not sure it's the most powerful one out there, but nice to have in the deck. And I think having 2 extra draw pips is actually really beneficial. Mutagenic Serum, so this is one of the artifacts in the deck, comes with an amber pip. Omni, destroy mutagenic serum. You may use friendly mutant creatures this turn. So that sounds like it could be pretty powerful. If you've got a lot of mutant creatures in your deck, if you've got them out on board already, this allows you to use them on a Logos turn, so a good bit of house cheating there, potentially getting a load of creatures that you've got in play into use in one turn. Neurosiphon, so we've seen this before, it's got an amber pip, here it's got one of the bonus draw pips. Play, if your opponent has more amber than you, steal one and draw a card. I love that. Quite often when you're behind on amber you get to steal and draw, plus you get the amber pip, so that's a pretty nice action. Mind over Matter, so this is one of the new cards, it's an action card. Put each creature into its owner's archives. So that's your creatures, their creatures. It's basically a Logos board wipe, and I kind of like it. I think it's taking stuff out of play. If you're playing around it, so you're holding back in terms of putting too many creatures on the board, you can kind of limit the damage on you, but anything you do put away is in your archives, so you can bring it back out. I think that's a nice card. I like that. It's going to be interesting to see how that combos up with other stuff and how damaging it can be when you put it into play. And Skippy Time Hog, 1 power creature. It's a mutant, so mutant version of this one, but play. Your opponent cannot use any cards during their next turn. Cards can still be played and discarded, but they can't actually use them. So that is, to me, a pretty powerful card. It's a play effect. There's nothing they can do about it. It pretty much puts any of their cards out of use, so that's nice. Umbrabot. So it's a creature. It's one of these kind of creatures with a mixture of names that combine the effects from some of the different houses. So in this case, you've got Elusive, I think that's coming from the Umbra, and then the bot bit, the Logos bit, Reap, discard a card from your hand if you do draw a card. So we've seen that effect before, and I think most people know that that's pretty handy for cleaning out some cards in your hand. So that's Logos, quite like that, and then into Shadows. So first up, this is a new action card we've not seen before, Dark Wave, comes with an amber pip. Play, deal 2 damage to each non-mutant creature. So we've seen some Cyclonium cards that damage mutants. This is a Shadows card that damages non-mutants, so 2 damage is pretty handy, certainly clears some wards. Not sure it's going to be enough to wipe a board unless your opponent's got some pretty weak non-mutant creatures. But I guess not many mutants in the existing deck, so if you're playing against one of the earlier sets, so Kota or AOA or Worlds Collide, then actually pretty much everything's going to take damage. So that's quite a good card. Look over there, another action. Play, deal 2 damage to a creature. If it's not destroyed, steal 1. So similar to some of the effects we've seen already, where it's deal damage to a creature, and then if it is destroyed, steal. So in this case, you need to not destroy the creature. So I guess you can, is it a better version, is it a worse version? I kind of like it, you know, you can do 2 damage if you're, you could do 2 damage to one of your own creatures if you don't want to kill something, so you can still get the steal. You can use it just to get rid of a low power creature that's causing you problems, just to spot damage. But if you put it on something a bit bigger, you obviously get the steal as well. So I kind of like that. Is it better or worse than previous versions of this effect? Probably worse, but it's still quite good. A couple of them in this deck. Rad Penny, we've seen this before, 1 power. This one's got an extra draw here from one of the other creatures in the deck. So, Mutant Thief, play, steal 1, destroyed, shuffle Rad Penny into your deck. So this is great. I mean, I think people have talked about these cards before. Steal and play, fantastic, gets you straight to steal that one. Destroyed, shuffle it back into your deck. You want to see this card coming around again and again. So that's going to really give you quite a lot of amber control. Another Rad Penny. Next up, another creature, Subtle Otto. 1 power, play. Your opponent discards a random card from their hand. So for me, great. Like I said earlier, I love that hand control. Love getting your opponent to discard cards. It can really put them off, especially if they're running a combo deck and you get one of their key pieces out their hand. So I like that. Another action, Tempting Offer, comes with an Amber Pip. It's picked up a bonus damage pip here. Enhance, it's put a capture pip in the deck. Play, return an enemy creature to its owner's hand. If you do, your opponent gains 1. So you can put an enemy creature into its owner's hand, but your opponent's going to gain 1. So I guess it's going to be pretty situational. You pick up the Amber Pip here. It's got a damage pip as well on this version. I think it just depends what's on the board. If you've got something on the board that's captured a load of amber, yeah, you're probably going to want to make that choice. If you've got opponents' creatures with a lot of play effects, you probably don't want to put it back in their hand and give them an amber as well for the sake of it. So it's going to depend on where you are in the game, what your opponent's playing, but could be an interesting card. Depending on what else is in the set. Miasma Bomb, it's an artifact, so it's kind of like an artifact version of Miasma. Enhance damage pips, so that's already somewhere else in the deck. Action, destroy Miasma Bomb. Your opponent skips the forge a key step during their next turn. So I kind of like this. I know it's not got the immediacy of Miasma in that you've got to play the artifact, keep it in play, and then use it. But it means you're not holding a Miasma in hand just in case. So you can get it down, it's there, you can use it when you think it's going to be appropriate. Unless they've got artifact control, there's not much they can do about it. So yeah, I like it. It's a nice variation. Reckless Rizzo, another creature. Quite a few really low power creatures, 1 power creatures, noticing that. So this one's got elusive, action, steal 2. Until the start of your next turn, Reckless Rizzo loses elusive. So interesting. I mean, it's not quite as strong as a Ronnie. You've got to get it down and it's got to survive a turn, and then you've got to call Shadows again and use its action to steal 2, but stealing 2 is pretty powerful. Until the start of your next turn, Reckless Rizzo loses elusive. Not sure what the point of that is. I mean, if your opponent wants to kill this, they're going to kill it. They're going to use pretty much any kind of damage spell to take it out straight away. So yeah, dangerous if left on board, but I can't see it surviving long. Next up, another artifact, Safe House. Comes with an Amber Pip. Action, archive a friendly creature from play. So I think that's going to be pretty good. That's something just nice to have on the board, nice to keep using every time you call Shadows. Not OP, but it's a useful effect. And then Moles, this is the one upgrade in the deck. Comes with an Amber Pip. This creature gains, your opponent may spend Amber on this creature as if it were in their pool. So this is kind of one of those upgrades you're probably going to want to put onto an opponent's creatures. So if you're up against a deck with Saurians, or I'm guessing Sanctum in Mass Mutations are also going to be capturing a lot. If you go up against creatures who are holding a lot of amber, pop this onto your opponent's creature, and then you can spend that amber as if it was in your pool. I think that's the point of this. So, you know, you've got a mole, nice bit of artwork. I like the play on words. I guess the idea is, you know, you've put a mole onto their side and it's feeding amber back to you. So I think that could be pretty nasty against certain decks. There'll be decks where it does nothing. Other than get you an amber, if they haven't got much capture or exalt, but could be very powerful. Next up, Lycos Thief, so another one of these combination creatures, 3 power, it's elusive, and it's got skirmish. So 3 power, elusive, skirmish. Not going to say no, not going to change the world, but pretty handy creature to have in the deck. So that's a quick run through all the cards. You know, what can I say? Stats wise, looking pretty much on average with what we've seen in previous sets. I like the disc creatures, I like the Sins. I think the Sins look like they're probably going to create some pretty powerful combos out there. Lycos, some interesting cards. Wasn't blown away by the cards in this deck. Be good to see how it plays. Shadows, again, some really nice creatures in there with some good effects. There's some twists on what we've seen before, so it's going to be interesting to see how players adapt to that and change things up. Not sure it's going to be the quickest deck in terms of draw speed. There's not too much in there that's getting you additional draw. You've got a couple of draw pips, a bit of archiving, but other than that, nothing to really get you through the deck very fast. So yeah, like I said at the start of the video, overall I think FFG have sort of released some middle of the road, kind of middle of the bell curve decks, and I think we're going to probably see some stronger decks than this when we get into the real release of Mass Mutations. But interesting to look at, and one of the first times we've really had a good look at some of the cards, so that's been fun. Overall, happy with this deck. Think it's good. Probably going to try the print and play myself. As I said at the start of the video, I'll put a link to the FFG page where you can download the PDF of this deck and have a go. And that's going to be it. I'll be going through the other decks that were released as well, so check out those videos if you can. Be great if you want to subscribe. I'll be releasing as much information as I can on Mass Mutations as we get closer to release. I'll also be streaming some games on the Crucible, so connect to me on Twitch as well. Hope you've enjoyed that video, and I'll talk to you soon.